So thank you for joining us today, Perianne. If you want to do a little introduction.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Raj. I'm Perianne Boring. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Digital Chamber. We're a nonprofit trade association advocating for the digital asset community.
Yeah.
We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., and a big focus of ours is public policy and regulation.
Amazing. So I'm the founder and CEO of Zeebu. A bit about Zeebu. At Zeebu, in our phase one, we created a neobank specifically catering towards telecom carriers. So telecom carriers are the intermediaries between cell phone service providers, right? So you're based out of the U.S., right? So you must be using AT&T or Verizon.
Verizon.
Okay. So now think about it like this. Before you were going to come to Dubai, you must have talked to someone in Dubai. You made a call to them through Verizon. The user here uses, let's say, Do as an example, which is the local telecom operator here. Verizon and Do aren't directly interconnected. They use telecom carriers to actually give them international voice, SMS, and data transfer.
Right.
At Zeebu, we specifically cater to those carriers, and that's what we've done in our phase one. We onboarded 95 carriers and large institutional clients, and we've processed over $1.5 billion in transactions in the past 8 months. The purpose of this was, number one, to lower their transaction fees that they pay today at a base level to banks. Number two, forex exchange trades have become extremely expensive, especially in the unemerged markets. And number three is really the time value, right? Because let's say you send a wire transfer in and out of the U.S., it takes 3 days on an international level. And on emerged markets, it's way more due to capital controls, lack of access to stable currencies such as the U.S. dollar, euro, etc. So it can go all the way up to 16 days in the unemerged markets. So at Zeebu, that's been our core mission to solve those exact problems. And as we move forward, we are building out our own liquidity protocol to actually scale our efforts.
Yeah, I believe you guys were originally settling using a stablecoin, a US dollar stablecoin, and now you have a token. Can you talk a little bit about why you have your own token and what prompted the change?
Right, absolutely. So even today we settle, we call it our stabilizer model, right? So any store of value and settlement happens using USDT, but the value transfer happens using ZBU token. The whole point is to, number one, make the transaction actually almost costless. If we were to use, let's say, USDT, USDC, Bitcoin, etc., it's very, very hard to make the end-to-end procurement process of the token units themselves costless for us, right? Because if we have our own token, we can partner with exchanges, make the fees extremely low, and we are also able to incentivize users on our platform because of our specialized tokenomics.
Right. Well, it makes a lot of sense that you have different carriers around the world, and they need to be able to settle and bring parity to allow for a global economy to exist in the telecom industry.
Right.
So you guys are playing I think a very distinct role there. The telecom industry was extremely disrupted by the internet itself.
Right.
So we all used to pay long distance fees to call our friends and family, or you only had like 3 minutes to call your mom if you were out of town, or because it'd be so expensive to call someone back home in another state or another country. But with the introduction of the internet and voice over internet protocol, it completely, now we don't really pay long distance fees. We use the internet to talk.
Exactly.
So the whole telecom industry was extremely disrupted by the internet. And now we're at the next coming of the internet, or Web3.
Right.
So how do you think Web3 is going to change the telecom industry further?
Right. So now if you look at the way telecom operators and carriers kind of operate is they have local switches, right? That processes off the voice, SMS, and data. The next phase of it, number one, of course, moving all of those Web2 transactions to Web3 itself. And number two would also be to start putting all of that data on a permanent ledger that's widely available, right? Because billing switching and dispute resolution is an extensive process amongst operators and carriers today. But if we've moved all that data on a permanent ledger, and it's very, very clear from consumptive use to data and everything that's recorded, dispute resolution will be almost automated.
Yeah. What about some of the security issues? So the crypto industry has been huge targets of SIM swapping. Many of us, I mean, I myself, I just doxed myself of who my carrier is, and I'm like, oh gosh, and now everyone's going to try SIM swap me again. It seems like the telecom companies are the weakest link.
Right.
So thoughts on how the blockchain can provide cybersecurity tools to such an important piece of communications infrastructure.
Right. Again, it goes back to actual open ledger technology as an example, right? Because today, every single, let's say, Bitcoin transaction goes through Bitcoin miners. It's permanently stored. It's immutable. So with telecom, I'll give you an example. Recently, an operator in Africa went blackout for 3 days. So none of their cell phone service users had any access to voice, SMS, or data services. This was because they had a centralized data storage solution at pretty much one data co-location. So when the co-location went down, their services entirely wiped out. So I believe distributing those assets using blockchain technology could prevent that entirely. So talking about security, but different type of securities, what's your outlook on, the SEC, their belief that all tokens are really securities, and how are you guys kind of working against that right now?
Well, it's an unsustainable position. It also lacks logic, reason. It's political. That the Securities and Exchange Commission in particular has become a very politically motivated and driven agency, and it didn't used to be like that. The SEC, largely the commissioners came from the markets themselves, had a lot of experience in the markets. Today, most of the commissioners have political backgrounds, and they're really there to carry out a political agenda. And I think that's been extremely detrimental to the role of the commission. So where we are today, we have an administration that does not believe we have a right to exist. Which is probably the most un-American position you could take.
Crazy.
They don't want us to be there. And the SEC is carrying out that political agenda that's been directed by other people in the administration. So we really face a dire situation, and it's not by coincidence that, Raj, you and I, we're two Americans who we live in the United States. We're building in the United States, but we've actually met for the first time here in Dubai. Because of this technology has not been welcomed in the U.S., and I think that is not only a mistake, but could have significant consequences for the future generations of Americans, where the advanced technologies are no longer, being built and developed on U.S. soil. But just on the regulatory piece itself, Chairman Gensler has made a number of speeches and statements in hearings and other forums where he's really made clear that he believes everything is a security, which does not take a nuanced approach that there's many different types of assets that are being developed on blockchain networks. So a lot of this has ended up in the courts. We've really focused over the past couple of years. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. So previously, we were very involved working with the commission directly to kind of work through getting guidance and regulation and clarity for the industry. We've really pivoted our focus in the courts themselves. That's where a lot of the policy is moving, and the courts are our last bastion of hope. So we've had I think the industry's had a number of important wins, but it's been discouraging that that's really what it's come to, and I think it's to our own detriment.
Exactly. I mean, also these important wins have come at a cost to the industry, right? Ripple spent $200 million litigating against the SEC.
Not an insignificant amount of
Exactly. This money could have gone towards, research, development, actually scaling Ripple's operations, growing the industry itself. But it ended up going in a bunch of lawyers' hands because the SEC decided to litigate. So, and conclusive of our conversation, Perianne. So far, what has been your biggest takeaway at Token 2049 and for 2024?
Well, I'm really glad to be here at Toga 2049 and in Dubai. And I would say it's been a couple years since I've been back to Dubai, and the industry has grown. The crypto industry has grown dramatically in a very short amount of time. And I think a lot of that's been spurred by regulators trying to be proactive and developing regulatory frameworks to provide clarity for the industry. But one of the things that feels very different to me is it feels like the people who are creating value in this country, in this jurisdiction, the people who are building, who are developing, who are creating economic value, they're respected.
Yeah.
There's this aura of just we respect people that are building.
Yeah.
And in the US, I feel like a lot of people in the industry are treated as they're demonized.
Yeah. Right.
And it's kind of an amazing kind of thought experience, as an American coming to the United Arab Emirates to have that feeling. It's very it's jarring.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really making me kind of rethink a lot of things and really double down in our in our role as advocates, as Americans, as users and consumers of this technology. I do think it's our job to fight for our rights, to have access to open source technologies, and I'm never going to stop in that pursuit.
Amazing. I mean, I'm in complete agreement with you, right? Because that's, as a company that has an office in the US and an office in Dubai, I spent time in both places. Being here as an American, I think to myself that there's so much acceptance for companies like mine, for Web3 industry as a whole. It's important for me to actually bring this over to the US. Right. So I'm complete agreement with you. I think that's a mission we're in pursuit of as well at Zeebu.
I don't think there's anything more American than freedom and liberty, and I think that's what really is embodied in the blockchain itself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, great having you with us today, Perianne. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of Token 2049.
Thanks for having me, Raj.
Good.